My name is Jim Lopes. I'm the Visitor Services Supervisor here at Culver Heritage State Park. And today we have another lunch meet. Thank you all for coming. This is, we're winding down the season. It's almost September. But we've got a couple more lunch meets coming up. This one today is on the library in Fall River. Hello, come on in. The library in Fall River, the public library in Fall River just celebrated an anniversary. So 120 years. 120 years. Makes it one of the oldest libraries in the country. You know, there's a library in Boston, there's a library in Bedford, but Fall River tells you what a great city Fall River was and is. 120 years ago, they took the resources and put them in the public library. So, get back to that in a second. Our next lunch meet is on the 18th of September, and it's about those wonderful photos that we have in the lobby, the faces of Fall River. The photos of Lewis Hine. And Lewis Hine was a sociologist and photographer who studied the working conditions of people in Fall River in the mills. And the mills, as we know, primarily women and children who were exploited. They were underpaid, they were overworked. And he's going to look, he's a labor specialist, he's going to look at these photos and talk about the lives of the people, how those photos changed American labor laws, especially the Bravery program. He's also related to another program that he's been working with somebody else, where there's someone else, another researcher who has looked at all the pictures that we have in the lobby here, all those children and all those women, and he's researched who their families were. What happened to those people? Now, who are the grandchildren of all the kids who were 10-year-old, 12-year-old doffers and bobbin boys and bobbin girls? Who are their kids? So maybe we'll get that next year. We'll get that, okay? And then our last program that we've scheduled is October 2nd, and that's going to be on the settlement of Narragansett Bay, Mount Hope Bay, Narragansett Bay, in the 1700s and 1600s. So it'll be about Native American villages and colonial settlements, all of that. So that's going to round out our season. Because the season was all about the people of Fall River, people of the region, all the immigrants, and all the different ethnic groups who made Fall River what it is. But today we're very lucky to have a celebration of the library, Free Public Library in Fall River. We didn't bring a cake, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay? That's okay.
Yeah.
So we can sing happy birthday at the end of this program. We're going to sing happy birthday. But our speaker today is Tayler Silvia, who's head of reference services at the Fall River Public Library. And Taylor's been here before. And we know that means that Taylor's going to give us all kinds of new information. He's full of surprises. He's promised me that secrets will be revealed. Secrets will be revealed.
Questions will be answered.
Questions will be answered, and we'll find out about the history of the library in Fall River. Thank you all for coming, and welcome, Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim. As Jim just mentioned, my name is Tayler. I work at the Fall River Public Library in the reference department. And kind of a brief story of where this presentation came up. 2 years ago, I was hired by the library in this position. And when I was hired, I had a lot of stuff, for lack of a better term, to go through. There were a couple of boxes that they had books and things that were donated and just an assortment of stuff I didn't even know what it was. In one of these boxes were a couple of photos of the library and library staff kind of through the years. And I was really like, wow, how cool is that? I had worked at the Somerset Library for about 8-9 years before I came over here. So going from Somerset to here, going to a library that has a lot of history and it's been around for 120 years, how cool is that? Not too many libraries in our area besides Boston, New Bedford, not too many can say that they've been around, for that long. So kind of this germ of an idea to go through kind of hitting a fast forward button and seeing these cool stops that the library had kind of through the years is what we're going to be looking at today. So I hope there is some information that y'all didn't know. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than willing to. If you just want to chat about the library, we can do that as well. So with that being said, let's get into it. So the public library was established as the Fall River Athenaeum in 1835. And there is a quote that I have that these individuals were desirous of having a library of well-selected standard and miscellaneous books always at hand for the purpose of general reading and reference. How do we start a library? Well, we need to get money to get books, to get settled. So money was collected by selling shares for the library. So hey, if you get a $5 share, you're invested in the library and you'll get money from it as well, and you're kind of like a founding father figure of the library. And there was quickly a collection that was made, and the library was put in a room in the post office and custom house building on Main Street where the old City Hall used to be, the old City Hall, I guess. And in the first annual report in 1836, a total reported for the shares was $702. So at that time, 1835, that's pretty good. Shows that even back then, people, and this is going to be a theme that I will keep going back to during this presentation, is people in Fall River always loved their library. They love it today. They loved it 10 years ago, 20, 30, 50, even 120 years ago and more. When the libraries first opened, the collection consisted of around 500 volumes, and the circulation, the rate of books that were being checked out on library cards and brought to individuals' homes averaged around 50 volumes per week. I'd like to think that we circulate much more than that in a given week nowadays, given the size of our collection now. So this was one of the things that I found in a box. This is it's not a copy of the share, but it's kind of a receipt that an individual purchased a share to fund the Athenaeum when they were collecting the money. From what I could see, the individual who purchased it on October 8th was Faith B. Borden, and it was share number 76. So that's kind of what we're looking at when it comes to what a share back then looked like. When I found this little copy in the box, I was like, what on earth is this? I've never heard of something like that before. And I thought it was really a really nifty thing that we have that, and it was just kind of squirreled away in a box that had been pushed to the side. And I thought it was really cool. So I suppose you can say that this little picture is kind of where this presentation, my desire to give this little story of the library came from. So here's a picture of where the library would have been. It's the old City Hall and / custom house. You can see one thing that I really like about this particular building is you can see it's long, right? You can see, it's kind of like, it reminds me of Faneuil Hall in Boston, honestly. That's kind of where my brain always goes to when I see this picture. So you can picture kind of hustle and bustle, what would be going on in there, where the library would be, who's going in. If it was as busy as we are on any given day, on any given week, that seems really exciting to me. So I really like that picture, though. So kind of show of hands, not too much pressure. Does anybody know what an Athenaeum is? Yeah, before you look at it. It's a subscription library. And back when libraries were popping up in cities, towns, you'd have to pay. You know, it would be a yearly kind of like a dues kind of thing. And you pay for a year, you get your library card, and off to the races. When libraries were first established, it was primarily for research and, you know, continuing your education besides I don't say just fiction, but it was much more formalized from what I can understand, right? And that's nowadays, that's typically what an Athenaeum still is. Yes, they still purchase fiction and picture books and things like that, but they're kind of how you would picture an older library to look like, with marble desk, kind of like what we have, the marble staircases and older art and sculptures and whatnot. And that's what we had in Fall River at the time when we first opened. We were yet a free public library. Nowadays, where you can go to an Athenaeum is in Boston. There's one in Providence, and there's one in Newport as well, the Redwood Athenaeum. Kind of a little aside, my girlfriend and I, we tried to visit the Boston Athenaeum, and you can't even walk in. You know, you can't just say like, oh, can we go see? You get a special ticket for that. And it was like, oh, or you can wait for a tour. It's like, oh, we even tried to I tried to sweet talk the guy. I was like, we're librarians, so I can give you my number, business card, anything. It's like, nope. So they're great. It's a good way to see kind of where we've come from, but in my opinion, doesn't get any better than the free public library. They're beautiful buildings, though, I gotta say. So, starting in the Athenaeum, you can start to see growth in us. Right off the bat, there was a lack of funding to broaden the scope of the Athenaeum. At the time, the print collection was lacking titles in particular subjects. There wasn't enough funds for complete staffing. Things went wrong, things were going to go wrong. Early in 1837, Fall River received from the United States government a surplus revenue that amounted to a little over $10,000. This money came unexpectedly to Town Hall, so there was a bit of kind of a commotion as to where this money would go to. And people who were invested in the Athenaeum, and they were friends of the Athenaeum, we call them, they strongly urged that a portion would go to the library and have Town Hall purchase some shares that would go to this fund for the library. And there was a quote that I really liked that read that a portion of this amount would be invested in shares of the library for the benefit of deserving scholars in our public schools. And I really like this quote because any public library, us included, we work hand in hand with the public school system. We're all stronger together kind of mentality. So again, it's that idea of, even back then, people loved their library and they saw the benefits and the importance of literacy starting at an early age and continuing on with that term that librarians love to use, lifelong learning. At the end of the day, it was decided that $800 would be appropriated to the library, and the town treasurer was instructed to subscribe for 160 shares in the Fall River Athenaeum. This act places Fall River as one of the first towns in Massachusetts to appropriate a special fund to make a distributing library kind of an offshoot of the public school system. So we have a first here. It's our first in the presentation. So a little bit of kind of fun info about the library. When we first opened, we had something that was called a Cabinet of Curiosities. Without looking at the screen, Cabinet of Curiosities was a collection of stuff, curiosities. Sometimes it would be art or things that were collected from other countries or just kind of unexplainable things. In the library's cabinet, there were shells and Native American art and stuff that friends of the Athenaeum would bring to the librarians, and they would stick it in this little display for individuals to see. It's very similar, kind of like to what we do nowadays at the Fall River Library. Outside of the reference department and outside the room, if you go all along the balcony, you're going to see 5 or 6 display cases, and they're filled with a rocks and mineral collection. And I'll touch on that a little further on. But that's very similar to what we do, you know, these wonderful things, these cool things that people could look at. And one of the things that we had was the skeleton and armor. And if anyone was here last summer, I did a presentation on that as well. So for anyone who does not know about the skeleton and armor, that is a kind of an artist's rendition of what this fella looked like when he was found. He was found by an individual who was sharpening utensils in a kind of a sand embankment close to where Hartwell Street is now. And as they're digging, they come across this, they find the skull, and they proceed to freak out, and people are brought over to unearth this skeleton. And there's a bit of a fun mystery behind them, because nobody really knows who they were, where they came from. Is it a Native American? I was wearing kind of this light chest piece armor thing. And it's really cool. It's one of my favorite kind of legends of Fall River, just because it's a skeleton. And how cool is that this thing was found and nobody knows who it was. And the skeleton and armor was put on display at the Athenaeum. That's where it comes into place in the story. Unfortunately, the skeleton and armor, along with most of the library, would be destroyed in the fire of 1843 on July 2nd. At the time, around a little under 1,200 volumes made up the collection that was held by the library, and those were all destroyed by the fire. The volumes that were rescued were spared only because they were being borrowed by subscribers, so they were safely away at home when this fire occurred. Make a long story short, there was an issue with the insurance, so only $544 was recovered on the policy, which would not be enough to even begin to replace some of the titles that were destroyed. With this sum of money and the few books that weren't destroyed, the directors began the formation of a new library, which by 1860 reached a collection size of 2,362 volumes. During this time, the library would kind of jump around to different locations. That's kind of a recurring theme until we established where we are today in 1899. The library jumped from place to place. So locations included Town Hall. Again, there was a location on Franklin Street, and there was even a location in a music hall, which I thought was really cool. So by 1860, there were demands by the people in Fall River for the formation of a free public library, and it became so insistent that stockholders of the Athenaeum offered to transfer to Fall River the library for the purpose of forming a free library that would distribute books for free and no subscription fee. Yay, wonderful. And on July 23rd, in 1860, an ordinance was passed by City Council for the establishment of the Free Public Library, and a Board of Trustees was elected and funds were appropriated for its maintenance. The founding of the library was only 10 years after the founding of the first free public library in Massachusetts to be supported by general taxation. And I hope my presentation doesn't give it away. Yes, okay. Where do we think the first free public library was in Massachusetts? Think for a sec. Yes?
Boston?
Is that your final answer?
Where?
Are you sure? Plymouth, Boston. Anyone else want to take a crack? Any guess at all? New Bedford? Somewhere? No. It was Boston. You get a gold star. You were right. Yes, indeed. Good job. So, kind of a little bit of library trivia for you. The first free public library was established in Boston. How cool is that? Has anyone ever been to the BPL? Oh, it's fantastic. It's awesome, right? What's that? Where is it? It's right near Copley, yeah. There's a literal T-stop right there for Subway, and it's like, whoa, it's cool. It's a really cool place. I recommend anybody, if you're in Boston for the day, go. It's fantastic. And you can get a Boston Public Library card with just your ID. That's cool. Oh, super. So this is a picture of the new old City Hall. Yeah, so this is the City Hall after old City Hall. That's the old city, not so old City Hall. And the library would eventually relocate here during this time.
Is that the same building, just a tower built on it? It looks very similar.
It does, doesn't it?
So it seems to me I recall something like that.
Yeah, because in 1871, they added the third and fourth,
Yeah,
fourth floor
they
of
added
the
to
tower.
it. Yeah.
You know that the dome is in Government Center? Like the tippity top is,
The eagle.
yeah, it's cool.
Because even the columns are across the street on Old Second Street.
Right. Okay, so like I said before, there were many stops that the library stopped at, where it occupied a couple of different spaces. It moved around in 1874 and stayed there till about 1886. At this time, the trustees found it was necessary to start improving conditions in order that the library would be able to fill all the functions of a public library at that time. In 1884, there was another annual report, and the trustees called attention to imperative needs that definitely had to be taken in the future to continue to provide appropriate and ample accommodations at the library. There were a couple of complaints that included a lack of space for books and other materials, a wider selection of books being available, and easier access for patrons of all ages. Back then, there was no elevator, so if you had to go upstairs, and guess what? If you had weak knees or if you just weren't able to get upstairs, too bad. You know, there was no real accommodations yet. And that was one of the complaints that they were already starting to get. On paper, the library was a success, but its potential wasn't really being recognized just yet. On March 19th, 1886, City Hall was destroyed by a fire, and another fire. It's like, wow, I'm starting to see a theme here. At this point, the loss to the library was nearly 5,000 books, either burned completely or damaged beyond repair. And it was at this point that the trustees were, wait a minute, we should build a fireproof building because, wow, what a thought. You know, it's burnt down twice. Let's make sure this never happens again. Because by now, the two kind of permanent locations of the library were damaged or destroyed, in this case, by fires. We're starting to move forward here. On January 7th, 1895, the mayor at the time recommended that he be authorized to petition to legislature for the authority to create indebtedness outside of the debt limit. And this would be known as the public library loan for the purpose of purchasing land and erecting a fireproof, there it is, fireproof building for the use and convenience of the public library. On March 22nd of the same year, this act was approved by the governor, authorizing the city of Fall River to incur indebtedness to an amount not exceeding $150,000 beyond the limit fixed by law for the purpose of building a public library, which would be under the power and control of the trustees. Oh, so one thing that I was thinking as I was getting all of this information together and really looking at it. At that time, what year? 1895. Being able to go kind of beyond indebtedness, you know, of $150,000. Wow. Like, looking at kind of like the money side, why would Fall River be allowed to do that? And when I started thinking about it, the more I realized at the time, Fall River was a bustling place. It was, you know, the place to be with the textile industry and all the different things that were going on. So it's really no surprise. And when you look at these, you'll see the pictures of the library shortly after it opened in 1899. It's really, it's eye-opening to see. We're still a beautiful building, yes, but when you think of it at the time that it was built, it's like, wow, that is very special. So this is actually a question that I'm asked pretty regularly at the library, is like, why are you here, and not me, the library, the building, our space? Why is it at 104 North Main Street? That's a wonderful question. At the time, I was like, oh, it's just where they chose. You know, it must have been land that was allocated one way or another, and hey, here we are. This is something that I learned putting this presentation together. Again, one of the biggest questions that was asked at that time is, where should the library be built? Up until now, the library had occupied spaces that had already been there. So this was the first time that Fall River had the opportunity to build a space that would exclusively be a library space. So to make space for stacks and desks and areas that would function best as a library. Those were starting to be the questions and answers that were being found. There were many suggestions as to where the library should be built, but the answer was ultimately found when Sarah Brayton offered the homestead estate of an individual named Mary Young. This site was deemed most advantageous to the city, and it was accepted by unanimous vote of the trustees. And there is a picture of what was there before us, which I thought was really, really cool. So there we are. Well, not just yet. We're getting there. We are almost there. Building the library. The lowest bid came in at $133,900, and the company that submitted this bid was W.L. Rutan of Boston. And the contract was awarded to him on a couple of conditions, which I thought was really, really cool. Kind of a major condition was that the structure of the library would be built with Fall River granite, which I thought was really, really cool. This price included the granite structure, the structural marble, ironwork, plastering, and more things that went into the construction of the building. And the price didn't include the ornamental marble work, the decorated ceilings, like the molding that goes along where the wall and the wall and the ceiling meet, book stacks, furniture, and other things like that. So here's a mystery picture that I think I know what is going on in it. I believe this is a picture of the library being built. It's either being built or it's being taken apart. So I am under the assumption that this is a being built picture, which I thought was really cool. Nowadays, if you were looking at the building, we would be facing the Elm Street entrance right there, and then kind of like on the side, and then in the front is our main entrance on North Main. I thought it was pretty cool because I didn't find any other pictures of what I could even consider to be kind of a being built picture of the library. And I thought it was, again, really, really cool. A couple of design choices that makes the Fall River Public Library a one-of-a-kind. The design of the building is Italian Renaissance, and you can notice it like right away even when you walk into the library. You see those beautiful pillars and the marble flooring, and even the marble like the walls around you as well. It's just like kind of eye-opening and jaw-dropping when you're like, wow, okay, what year did I just walk into? It's a cool first impression, I feel. Within the library itself are our columns and the buttresses that line the upper level of the library. And again, this incredibly important design choice that we've already gone over. The building is 100% fireproof, again, being built out of Fall River granite. A lot of the interior partitions that you see are brick, and the floors are filled with concrete. Stairways are made of marble, iron, concrete, and stone. And at the time, the roof was made of steel filled in with terracotta blocks and covered with a layer of covered with copper over a layer of concrete. I want to note that our roof has been replaced a couple of times since 1899, so there's no more copper. So it's rubber. I don't want to say it's rubber, but it's certainly not that anymore. Besides the doors and window frames, there is not a single piece of woodwork that enters into the construction of the library. So again, heaven forbid there was a fire that took place within the library, it would be contained. So there would be a 100% chance that the fire would not spread. So we learned our lesson at one point, or vice versa, wouldn't be able to get in as well. This picture, this is kind of another, there's a story behind this picture. I was doing a little bit of research for another presentation I did here last month about doing genealogy, and I wanted to show a picture of a newspaper. And this was the newspaper on, I believe it was March 28th or 29th in 1899. It was the day that the library opened. So this picture right there is kind of a sketch of what the library, is telling people, hey, this wonderful, there was a party, a gala that, for people who went to the library to, see what it was all about and see what this culmination of funds and work, and here it is. I thought it was really cool, and I sought that edition out on our microfilm collection. So here we are, shortly after our opening. I really like this picture a lot because if you look really close, you can see cobblestone road. I'm a bit of a landscape nerd, and just if you look at the landscaping of the grass, it's beautiful, like beautiful building. We still are a beautiful building, but when you look at this picture, think of the time, 1899. How cool would that be? You see this huge, behemoth of a building, and wow, like you can't wait to go inside. So I did a bit of a cool thing, I feel. There's some pictures that I was able to kind of recreate now. So a couple of days ago, I tried to find kind of what would be a very similar location to take a photo, and there's a couple of pictures that I included of myself trying to do that, to recreate some of these photos. So here we are, trying to recreate that picture that you saw before. So after we opened, there's someone who I wanted to introduce you guys to. The first director of the library building where we are today in 1899 was a gentleman named George Rankin. And Mr. Rankin was first employed by the library as a clerical assistant in the preparation of a catalog of library materials in 1874. He was elected as the chief librarian in December 1905. So here's a fellow who kind of rose through the ranks. He was kind of just a clerical assistant, and he became the director of the library. He was the head librarian, I suppose. So we're going to go through a couple more pictures here. This picture is facing, so if you walk in North Main Street and you're going to go up the stairs into the main lobby, if you look to your right, there's going to be a door. That door goes into the old administrator's office. So it's a meeting space for staff. And in that door, kind of in that room, is what used to be the administrator. Like at the time, the administrator would have used that room as their office space. Fast forward 120 years later, there we are. Not too much has changed. There's a railing, and there's a little placard on the door that says administrative office. But not too much has changed. I mentioned before there were just some pictures that I didn't have the opportunity or time to recreate. This is one of the first ones that I didn't have too much luck. This is the administrator's office here. That fireplace still exists. Our fireplaces have since been sealed off to prevent critters and other unwelcome guests of the feathered variety. This portrait of Abraham Lincoln, we still have. It's on display. You can see it. It's in the Fell Room. So, this is our lobby. And if you go to the library today, you're going to notice a couple of different things. First and foremost is, if you're in this picture, you're not facing the main desk anymore. You're facing stack 3, where all the fiction books are. That's where the stack started back then. And if you look up, you see that balcony that's like directly in front of us and up? That's where stack 5 is. As you can see, there was no stack 5. Stack 5 is a reference, is where the reference collection is. That's where we keep all of our periodicals, magazines that we've held on to, and back issues of newspapers that go back to like 6 months ago-ish. So there was no stack 5 yet. So a couple things have changed, but some things have stayed the same. And here we are today. As you can see, it's in color, but the main desk was to my right. Disregard the beach umbrella. It gets quite hot at the main desk because we're underneath. I should have taken a picture of it. If you look up in the main lobby, you'll see there's actually glass above you. And it gets quite hot for the poor ladies and gentlemen who work at the main desk. So our kind of not so long-term solution was to put a beach umbrella. It fit with a summer theme too, you know? So thought it was pretty cool. You can see stack 5 is above you, and stack 3, where all the fiction books are directly in front of you. Here's a cool picture. This would have been what the reading room would have been. So if kind of like a very early version of what reference is today. Thought it was pretty cool. You can see the door. So to the left, those doors would go back into the lobby. And again, I wasn't able to recreate this picture because that's not the setup anymore. But one of my favorite features of the library myself, if you look up at the ceiling, there's really impressive mold work that was done, and it's quite beautiful. And I've begun to really like it. You don't see work like that anymore, and it took a lot of skill. So this is above the on the balcony, relatively close to the reference room. You can see the main desk on the bottom, and in front of you is just a wall. Oh, if you look up at the top on the ceiling, you can kind of see that glass that I was telling you about in this picture. And fast forward, 120 years later, here we are. So there's stack 5, and you can see the glass. And this picture doesn't do it any justice, but there's molding kind of surrounding that sheet of glass as well. And it's really something to behold for sure. And directly in front of me is one of the display cases that holds the mineral collection. Here's another picture on the balcony. If you see that door that's kind of to your right, not at the end of the walkway, but the one that's like halfway. If you went in that door today, that's where my department is. That's where reference is. Back then, when we first opened, it was an art gallery, believe it or not. And I think I did a pretty good job of recapturing that very same picture. I thought that was really cool. So, as I was mentioning, there used to be an art gallery in the library. We still technically have one. A lot of these paintings and portraits, some were sold in auction, but many of them we still have. They're hung throughout the library, and most of them were gifts. Some were purchased by the library over the years. And many of them, I think, is really cool. Many of them were actually created by artists in Fall River who went to the Art Academy, which I thought was very cool. So here's the art gallery. Keep in mind, this is where reference used to be.
Taylor,
Yes,
that photo all the way to the left at the bottom,
indeed.
it's a male figure right there.
Yes.
I reckon I'm curious if it's the same exact portrait that we have at the Historical Society. No, it's Robert Remington.
Okay, yeah.
He's the man actually that owned the house.
Okay.
So this is, he brought it from Columbia Street up
Interesting.
Rock Street.
Okay. Oh, that would be
That's the
interesting.
same exact portrait. that
I want it back. No.
we have. You'll have to talk to Michael about that.
Yes. So this is where reference is today. That's part of the reference collection. And you can see actually above on the walls are some of the portraits that I was telling you about that make up our little art gallery at the library. And you can enjoy the small on the top left of the photo is my finger. I got in my own way. So this is where it gets a little fun with the photos. This is the children's room. This is the children's area when we opened, which I thought was really cool. You can see the children's desk is to the left, and books that look not as fun as children's books are today. Oh, this is part of our children's department today, run by David Mello, the legend himself. You can see there's a lot more to look at. It's much more colorful, and you can see that our collection certainly uses our space. If there's ever a child who, did I skip one? Okay. If there's ever a kiddo that says, "You don't have a book that I like," it's like, there's got to be something. Out of all these books, you're trying to tell me we don't have something you don't want to read? There's got to be something for you. Here's another photo. I was able to do this one justice, I feel. We're facing another fireplace. You can see if you look all the way in the back, you can kind of see there's like a little banner being hung. That's where the fireplace is. Now today, there we are. We have tables now. The fireplace is still there. There's the pillars. We have a very cool children's space, I feel. There's some seating in the children's area where the kiddos could do some work. A lot of these windows actually still exist, like where they are in these photos, which I think is really, really cool. This one I like a lot. You can see the librarian kind of in the foreground, the background of the photo, kind of to the right at her desk, and you can see the kiddos are reading or doing work, something like that. I thought this was a pretty cool picture. And then another picture of what our collection looks like. So where our picture books are, I thought it was pretty cool. This was a children's display. So if you want, what better way to tell people of all ages, are you looking for your next book? You can put together, librarians usually what we'll do is we'll put together a display of either books based on a theme or new books. That's what a display would have looked like back then. Nowadays, especially at the Fall River Library, we try to go kind of beyond the expectations of what people expect at a library. So David is an avid robot collector. So this summer, our summer reading club theme was space. Out of this world, books are out of this world. So he was generous enough to put his own collection up on display in one of the display cases in the children's room, which I was like, oh, that's a good way to show where we're at today. And here's a photo of our Elm Street entrance. Not much has changed, to be honest. We still have that little balcony that you can see kind of above that door. There's the pathway that goes from Elm Street to North Main. And the building we have not changed. The outside of the building has not changed, which I think is very impressive. Here's another view from Elm Street again. That tree is still there. That big tree that you're looking at, that guy is still there and is massive. And if you look to the right, you can see the Bank Street Armory in that photo as well. So you're getting like a glimpse of downtown. And then more of an aerial view. I'm not entirely sure when these photos were taken, but as you can tell, they're a little, there's more cars, there's more people. So that was the 60s, that's what I was kind of 70s, kind of where my brain was. So there's a couple of gifts that were donated to the library. And in 1907, one of the first gifts that we received was from the Coffee Tavern Association. And this was a group and a place that young men could meet to discuss the arts. They could discuss theater, literature, and more things to abstain from going to a bar and drinking alcohol and debauchery and other naughty things. And the association presented four murals that were done by, at the time, a world-famous artist named Cremonini. He was visiting Fall River to paint in Notre Dame. There was a mural there as well. And he created 4 for the library that you can still see. If you go in the north main entrance and you look up, like immediately, you're going to see there's kind of a little dome thing in the middle. And then on the north, south, west, and east parts are different murals. And they all tell a different thing. And I'm going to go back to this slide so we can talk about it more. But I wanted to show you these murals. The first one is on the north side. It's called The Vision of Washington. And it represents George Washington in the spirit of democracy. He is gazing into the future and is dreaming of the coming greatness of the country. So when you walk in, this one is to your right when you look up. The next one to the east, so if you turn around and you look up, that's where you'll see this one. This panel represents the city of Fall River, and you can see there's various scenes of industry and commerce that are shown in this scene, which I thought was really, that one might be my favorite one. The painting on the west wall represents the United States. And then finally, the painting on the south represents Massachusetts, depicting art, industry, and education. And you can see the representations of each of these ideas in that mural. So going back, the second time the library was gifted money was a much more substantial gift of $50,000, and there were a couple of conditions attached to it. This money, known today as the Davis Fund, was given by the Mrs. Bertha Borden Davis in memory of her husband and her son's father, the honorary Robert T. Davis. Establishing this memorial, Mrs. Davis was carrying out the wishes of her husband, who, before his death, he planned to make a gift to the library for this reason. The fund was established in 1927, and the $50,000 was deposited in the form of a trust. All income was turned over to the library trustees for the purchase of reference books, and to repair any of the paintings that were donated by the Davis family. To this day, the library still uses the Davis Fund to purchase reference materials because we are a 21st century library. This includes books, print materials, as well as electronic and internet databases as well that are used for reference. There were a couple other conditions that were attached to the fund. The reference room would be known from that day as the Davis Reference Room, and that a portrait of him was to be hung in a suitable place within the room. This suitable place today is behind the main reference desk on the western wall. And all of the books that are purchased with this fund have a book plate, a little sticker inside of them that says, purchased from the fund provided in memory of His Honor, Robert T. Davis and his son, Robert C. Davis. There was another donation as well in the form of a gift. It was an individual named James Manchester had a mineral collection, and at the time it was described as the finest mineral collection in the world. His mineral collection can be found on the upper balcony of the library outside the reference room. Anybody can look at it, take pictures. Just don't open the cases. You can't touch. Don't touch them. Don't try. And there was also another gift of $5,000 for the purchasing of books and periodicals for the children's room. And we're going to skip a couple years ahead. And for this last portion of the presentation, I wanted to briefly go over important moments in our nation's history and how it affected library services and really the community. 1930 to 1942 is the Great Depression. How did this affect library services? First off, there was an increase in circulation to $625,000 in the 1930 annual report. And at the time, it was stated due to unemployment at the time. More people weren't working, so it gave them more time to do other things like read. And every library department increased its services, leading to increased expenditures. So there was more of a demand for the library at this time to offer free books, free anything. So that's kind of something that we saw even in the recession in 2008, 2009. More people used library services to check out free books, or museum passes, movies, music. When there's a hard time in the community, there is definitely an uptick that libraries see in usage of the library. And beginning in 1931, Fall River had a total debt that totaled more than $13 million, and credit was no longer available. And the Board of Finance put a handful of reforms that were instituted to try to keep the debt of the city in as control as possible. And in March, it was announced that 4 branch libraries would be closed, and that the main library would be closed on Sunday, and 6 employees were laid off. Because I have a dog in this race, I wanted to show you guys which library services were affected. And again, let's think of how this, at that time, how this would have affected not only the community, but the individuals who worked at the library as well. 4 branch libraries were closed. The main library was closed on Saturdays. They reduced personnel by 9 assistants. All pages, kind of like library workers who do clerical, they put the books away, they get books. All pages were effectively laid off. They did not work at the library anymore. The children's room closed at 6 p.m. daily. No more budget to purchase new books. A budget for rebinding books. If a book was damaged, too bad. No more budget for that. The budget for groundskeeping, repairs, and upkeep was cut significantly as well. The periodical fund was cut in half. Purchasing newspapers at the time, that would have been cut. Running expenses were reduced in half. And this is the kicker to me. There was a 20% reduction in all wages and salaries. It's like, whoa. If that happened nowadays for me, I wouldn't be able to keep up with my mortgage. So seeing that, it's like, are you kidding me? It's crazy. We are going to jump a ways after the Depression and the library and the war effort. This is a little more fun. We're past the Depression. How did the library assist in World War II? Let me find it. There we go. The library participated in the war effort of World War II, just like many other public agencies and groups at the time in the community. They wanted to help any way they could. In the annual report of 1942, it was stated that their first consideration for that year was to identify the library with the war effort. The library would stay true to its word and cooperated with the American Red Cross, the Library Association, and the United States organization, the USO, in launching the National Victory Book Campaign, whose aim was to collect 10 million books for distribution to servicemen. There was a committee that was in charge specifically for the local group in Fall River, and that local group was able to collect more than 7,000 books for that drive. I thought that was really cool. These were some of the posters at the time that would have been put up on display. I really like the one on the left because that's actually one for the Victory Book Campaign, and the one to the right is to donate to the American Library Association to provide books to our servicemen at the time. And I always tell people, nowadays, the library is we're much more than just a library. We're much more than books. We're a community, I want to say we're a community center, but we are a place where the community can come together for public meetings, for concerts, for book clubs, and anything else that we have to offer. And it was really fun to see that, especially back then, where it was all hands on deck for something like World War II. It was really fun to see librarians and the community making sure that they were doing their most important job, which was to support one another. You'll see that librarians are usually at the forefront of some kind of societal movement. It was really fun to see a picture like this, this two individuals who are offering their time to put together this book drive. I do want to give you a disclaimer. I do not believe this was taken at the Fall River Library. This is something I found doing my research. I wanted to see if there were pictures of this drive and this kind of movement happening, and I really liked this picture. During World War II, the library was designated as a war information center. And at this time, that was in the form of the reference department. In the newly named Davis Reference Room, librarians were equipped with up-to-the-minute information about the war and the at home and abroad. There were pamphlets that contained information on nutrition and first aid, casualties, what to do if there was a blackout or an air raid or some kind of awful emergency that might have happened at the time. There was also a file compiled on all Fall River servicemen and women. So if someone was looking for somebody, oh, hey, which group, what company is Mr. So-and-so in? Oh, here you go right here. I thought that was really cool. This is the time before you can just, someone might just have time to give you a call or, email, Facebook, anything like that. You could only write. So to me, the library having that service was ahead of its time, really. And after the war, the library served veterans by pointing them in the direction of jobs and other ways they could educate themselves and help them get back to being a citizen, a plainclothed civilian at the time. Post-war library use, with the close of the war in 1945, the library's most popular was still a reference room. which working and being the department head, I'm like, yes, heck yeah, we always win. We're always the best. Returning veterans use the room's facilities frequently, and the department found an increase in calls from local businessmen who wanted to know more about what was going on in Fall River, opportunities, and there was a desire of the general public to know more about what was going on in the news, more information about the atomic bomb and labor relations at the time, kind of like what we see today. We have a lot of people who they see something on the news and they want to do their own homework on it, you know? They want to be more informed about their local community as well as, you know, at a city level, a state level, a nationwide level. We still see that today. And there was a desire for specialized information about advancing oneself and civil service examinations as well. So, where do we go from there? In 2001, the library was completely restored. We are still at the same location. We still are at the same, we're still in the same building. Some of the updates that the library received was an elevator to be ADA friendly. We are 100% wheelchair friendly, handicap friendly. So we give everybody the opportunity to go to the library and go to library events and accommodate as much as we can.
They don't plan to digitize any of the information, like those Army records or whatever they are, the soldiers.
So
Could that be digitized?
I do not have those anymore. I don't know where they could be. I do not. I don't have a single iota of military records. What we do have and what we will be digitizing are our microfilm of the Fall River Herald News from the mid-19th century till about 1923. We will not at the moment. But we have all of the city directories from, again, the mid-19th century till today. So it was brought to I found out that the only city directory that we're missing is 1982.
So there's a directory for 2018?
Indeed. Yeah. How cool is that?
They're not putting it on.
For the 2018, 2019, probably not right away because copyright. That's always a scary thing. But whatever would be considered free use and in public domain, no questions asked. So that's how we can do the newspaper. You know, no one's going to be knocking at my door at 3 in the morning. You know, like, hey, were you part of the digitization of the 1854 Fall River Monitor? No one's going to be looking me up for that.
What is the cutoff date? 1923, something like that?
24. At that point, it gets messy. It's definitely something that I'm invested in. But seeing where we go, how we get there, the roadmap is still being drawn. You know, but for the time being, I'm hoping in a couple of weeks we'll start to have some of our first batch of microfilm being digitized and would be available to look at. I'm very excited about that. That's kind of our first foray into digitizing some of these records. And we'll have the microfilm available as well. It's that idea of having it more out in the open, right? You know, more convenient, I guess would be the term.
Is the city directory published every year?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the Polk City directories, yep. They, at a point, they started including the phone numbers. I don't quite know what year, but Yeah, all of the cross streets are there. You can look up. Yeah, businesses. That's the really fun part. You can see the businesses of 1924. Where were they? Stuff like that. That's really cool. That's my favorite. Are you? Yes.
So once you digitize the records or like the Herald News, would they be available online or just by visiting the library?
So, yes and yes. Having our newspapers digitized for the first, from 1854 or whatever it is, to eventually we'll get to 1923, that will be a service provided by kind of an offshoot of Ancestry.com. And as our contract and agreement with Ancestry is concerned, it's only available in the brick and mortar walls of the library. But you can go on it on any computer. If you bring your iPad, your laptop, your whatever, you don't have to use the public computers as long as you're connected to our Wi-Fi. You have access to it. So to answer your question, you have access to the newspapers online, but at the time it will only be in the library. That agreement might change. Who knows in a couple of years, But we're expecting it to be popular, and it'll be fun. It'll be cool to have all those records readily available, just on the computer in a really nice picture. Does anybody else have any questions? Hi.
The library is now.
Yes.
The building that was there was a house?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was it anyone living in it, or was it?
If I remember correctly, in my little research, I believe the individual who owned it had passed away, and the...
1891.
Seems like a beautiful house.
Okay, there you go.
Is that Mary B. Young?
Yeah.
She was the mother of B.M.C. Durfee, the high school.
Okay.
It seemed like a beautiful building to tear down.
Yeah.
And between the time they tore that down and the library opened, how much time passed with the construction?
Ooh, I couldn't find how much time, but if she passed away when?
1891. You could probably find it maybe in the Forest City record.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, was that house built out of granite?
Hers? I'm not sure. Yeah. I know we are. Yeah, right? You could build a library in there, It could have. It probably would have, with their luck.
Are there any plans to increase parking facilities? Yes. Parking is just awful.
Let me talk to you at the end.
They have to run it out and put money in the meter and...
I know. We'll talk after. Okay? Yes.
I understood, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, you can please tell me if I am. I don't think that the house was torn down, I think it was moved.
Really? It's like Willy Wonka.
This is what my great-grandmother had said. Maybe she...
Interesting.
I don't know.
Huh.
But she
I would have loved to have seen that.
The land was given,
Yeah.
donated, but the house was moved.
Interesting.
I don't,
About
maybe
that.
I'm not, maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong, if you look it up.
Yeah, for sure. There wasn't too much,
Historical Society,
right?
brick by brick.
Yeah.
On Columbia Street.
Uh-huh.
And I'm assuming that this house, I was told, was put in the Highlands.
Hmm.
It may not even be there anymore, but I thought that only the land was donated, the house was moved. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when I was doing my research, it was a line, and it was just, it was the homestead of Mary P. Young, and that's it. That's all it gave.
Don't know.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I remember driving, around on Sundays, you know how it was.
Yeah.
Your family used to drive around after church,
Yeah.
for breakfast, and you go to anywhere like to Freetown for ice cream,
Yeah.
or to, or to Diamond Rock,
Yeah.
or something like that. And every time we took Highland my great-grandmother would say, that house used to be where the library is now.
Interesting.
I used to be at the library every day.
Yeah.
I lived up the street, so,
How fun. Interesting.
so, I don't know, maybe she was wrong, I mean,
Yeah.
not wrong, she could have been,
I think you and I have to get down to the bottom of this mystery.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll team up.
I have to do something. Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta do something now.
There you go.
It's gonna bug
That's always my goal with these, is to get that, make people start to think,
Do you remember whereabouts on Allen Avenue that was?
Yeah, over, you remember where the Highland Restaurant used to be, where Robeson and Highland Avenue?
They meet
It
up,
was almost near Adam's house, almost near Adam's house, but the opposite side of the street. Yeah, yeah. It was on Highland Avenue, but we're near Adam's house.
Yeah.
But across the street from where Adam's.
Interesting.
It is funny, because thinking of it now, there is a house, I want to say it's like orange brick.
Yes,
And yeah,
And
it
it was
looks
like-
very similar.
Huh.
yeah. So I don't know. I imagine you could go somewhere and find out. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I'm
the
sure.
real estate of Fall River or something
Uh-huh.
like that, and check it out. Like, was this? And if I'm even remembering, I think there was even a plaque on the house. So it might have said.
Just have to start walking down.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little.
Go all the way down. Yeah. Huh.
It is funny, when you
Interesting.
start looking into the houses,
Mhm.
how many of them moved to the historical center is not the only one.
Right, no, I mean, because some of these houses were in perfect condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially houses that, remember, there were 3 fires in Fall River.
Right.
There were a lot of houses that were totaled.
Yeah.
There were some that were saved,
Huh.
and to, being at that place, they'd move them.
Mm-hmm.
Because naturally, nobody wants to be in the middle
Right.
of the fire zone, so that they would get and move the houses.
Yeah.
You gotta remember something, in those days, in 1834, you could buy a house
Mm-hmm.
for $40,000, maybe even less.
I know.
And that was a mansion.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, when you say that they gave $150,000 to build the library, that's like having $1.3 million today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, why would they move a house that was saved from a fire?
Right.
Especially if they had money.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell me only 2 people lived in a house like that.
Right.
They had servants.
Yeah. Right.
So naturally, if they
Like
had
Downton
servants,
Abbey.
they definitely could afford to do it.
Right.
So I'd like to check it out.
Yeah.
Because
I'll come see you.
We're on to something. Yeah. I want you to do all the work and then report to me.
I'm sorry?
You do all the work and report to me.
Yeah,
Okay?
then I'll go and tell you.
See, I know how to
No,
delegate.
but I'm retired. I put I want when I want.
Awesome. So,
How many takers have you had for the bicycles?
a bunch. I don't know exactly. That was what I wanted to bring up to kind of conclude my little history lesson of the library. I wanted to go back to something that I said. Libraries nowadays aren't just libraries where you can only get books. There's people like me who work there. We represent all, not only people, but things that can be checked out. Libraries now check out instruments to people. Hey, do you want to learn how to play the ukulele?
I read that in the Herald News the other night.
Yes.
They even have kitchen equipment.
Yes.
Right, certain
Yeah.
kinds of pans that you
Yeah,
don't use.
cake pans and
And they do that at Farm Public Library?
not cake pans at the moment. Right now, all we have for like a weird thing are the bikes. We literally check it out to a person's library card, and they have to sign a waiver, and that says like, I promise that I solemnly swear that I will wear a helmet and I will not do anything stupid, and I will bring it back. We have 3 bicycles. 2 were donated by the city, part of the bike trail project. The other was donated by one of our trustees.
Now, those aren't the bikes that the city donated, those ones used to be at Government Center? Because they used to have
They
bikes
used to have
in the
one
lobby at Government Center.
Possibly. I had not been to Government Center for a while.
They stole all those.
We have not had stolen bikes yet, which is yay. Yeah, that's where we put the bikes, right in the lobby. We have a little bike rack, and when people wanna, they've been popular. There's been times since we started having the bicycles available. It looks like that. There's always one. I've yet to see, since we started doing them back maybe a month and a half or so, maybe 2 months, the summer went, it's either empty or it has one bike, which is great. You know, we weren't too sure if it was gonna,
How long can you keep it?
a couple days, I believe. Definitely a couple days to a week, I believe. It's fun. You know, we offer museum passes for families and individuals to get into local museums and zoos for free or at a discount. Yeah, they're great. We offer free movies on Monday nights and Wednesday afternoons. There's popcorn, you know. We have concerts. We have book signings. We have story times of all shapes and sizes and people. And the library keeps up with who is in Fall River, who uses the library. And, you know, we're here because of individuals like you who are interested in the library. You know, everybody loves the library in some way, shape, or form. And that was why I wanted to do this little presentation. So.
Our branch has, every third Thursday, we have a tea.
The South?
South.
Who did, Debbie? Debbie does. I love them.
We have a book club.
Yes, excellent. We have book club too,
Yes,
but
you tell them what to read, we don't. We get, when we set it up.
that's dangerous. No.
No, but it's better because.
Oh, absolutely.
We have like, a theme.
Yes.
Like this month, when we have our, in September, it's gonna be about space.
Excellent.
Or
So it should
if
be
somebody
nighttime
doesn't
because
want to, they can read anything
Right.
they want.
Right.
You can read nonfiction if you want.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you all.
Oh, we're being thrown off.
Thank you.